So this is going to wind up being mostly a slideshow, but I wanted to show the process I went through for getting the cabinet on the Philco Junior freshened up. Uh, Normally I wouldn't film this sort of thing at all because the amount of time it takes for me to do it and the process of doing it outside in good weather is not something I try to set the camera up for. It takes too much time. I'll show a process at some point if you really care. But for the least bit, I at least took photos of all the different stages. So the first shots here actually show what the set looked like when I initially bought it. And for $20, it had the transformer missing, some tubes were gone, knobs were gone, there was a chicken head knob on the tuner. But cabinet-wise, it was structurally intact. There were no cracks, no separating veneer, nothing really, really awful. And so I figured, hey, for $20 I can probably get a replacement transformer, all that, easy to repair. Very basic tubes, no problem, I've got those. And then grill cloth. So I figured I could sort all that. And the first step, I did the cabinet first before I did the electronics, because I wanted to get the thing looking well and at least be a nice thing to have for my mom so that she could put it in her office or wherever. So to strip it, I actually used a 50-50 mixture of acetone and lacquer thinner, recommendation from all the guys on the Antique Radio Forum. I used to use the really sloppy gel style of stripper, which takes time, it's a huge mess, and yeah, if you leave it alone for too long, it crystallizes and you gotta put more on it, and it's nasty. The acetone lacquer thinner thing works great, works quickly, and then you can clean it up with, I use like acetone and paper towels usually, although some people recommend like hamster bedding because you can rub it on there. I don't like that because it creates another massive mess, and paper towels are cheap and I can throw them away. Anyway, so wipe down the whole thing, usually several applications, leave it on there for a bit until it softens the finish through, then wipe it off. And then once you've got the majority of the finish off, scrub the rest of it down with more acetone, lacquer thinner, and rags. You usually try to use lacquer thinner for the very final portion because if there's any residue left behind, most of it's going to be lacquer based. Get all that off. And thankfully the finish on this was fairly thin. Now the next thing I did was I applied a wash coat of shellac. I actually got some out of a can, thinned it with alcohol so it had more of a watery consistency, and then brushed it on, which worked pretty well as a sealer. I should have grain filled the set. I looked at it and thought, the grain pattern's fairly tight, I don't need to bother with it. In hindsight, probably should have done it anyway just to get a smoother finish, and it also means you don't have to do as much fine grit sanding at the very end to get a nice smooth finish there. Once that was done, I also decided to replicate the two-tone finish on it. Well, what I wasn't sure of though, because there are two thoughts when redoing redos. Either you use lacquer like they originally did, which they shot it quickly, they didn't spend a lot of time dealing with fine details and all that. Some sets they did, some sets like this one, which are fairly cheap, they didn't. In this case, they actually just toned the inside trim, or they painted the inside of the speaker area. They put some additional toner on the base molding, as well as the molding over the top of the front panel, which is grooved. And then the outside edges of the front are actually done the same color as the body, and then the front section of the faceplate is done with absolutely no toner at all. I actually experimented with this when I took a picture of the radio prior to stripping, stripped it, and then compared the tone of the wood, and realized that what they basically did was most likely masked off the center section, toned it, and then shot the body and everything all at one go, and then probably went over the molding maybe one or two more times. Ultimately, I think I wound up a little darker than original, but I think it looks nice. So after I got that figured out, I went ahead and I taped up the whole center section, all the way around the edges, and thankfully there is a groove running around the border that separates the two areas, light and dark. And I used a razor blade to carefully score the tape so that it matched all the contours, as well as the inside and outside parts of the grill cloth molding, so that when I did the darker stuff, I could also hit the inside areas. Next up, so once I had the center section done, I'm trying to remember the order here. I at least shot the entire cabinet with the center section covered up with with one shot of this guy here, Bell and Dark Walnut. This was mostly because the normal stuff I use, which is Mohawk brand, I can only get that in the mail, and I didn't want to order any, and I just so happened to have a store, and they happened to have this color available in McClendon's. So I picked up a can of that, and that worked out really well. In order to get the dark tone, I wound up doing 2 coats of this on the outside of the cabinet, as well as the outer section of the front panel. That worked out great. I also put a little bit on the trim inside and out just to see how it would look. It was not dark enough to completely cover up some of the damaged spots on the molding, so I actually wound up obliterating those using Dark Sapel Brown, Mohawk brand, that I had left over, and I had to throw that can away so I don't have it to show here. But once I had the majority of the body done, I taped all the rest of it up, and then I shot the trim with Dark Sapel Brown, and just obliterated everything, made it a nice dark brown color. From photos I've seen of original cabinets, it looks like it probably wasn't totally obliterated, so if I had to do it over again, I would probably just use an additional 1 or 2 coats of the dark walnut on the trim, because odds are they only had 1 color of toner to do the whole cabinet for simplicity's sake, and I just shot it rather quickly. And then over time it tends to darken anyway, so the trim may be a bit lighter. Not sure, don't have any original photos, especially not ones in color. Now, this is where it kind of went south. I had the cabinet looking good. I had the trim, everything done. I was happy with the colors, liked the way it looked in sunlight, especially because in these photos, I'm trying to do it under in-room lighting, which was pretty bad, and I wasn't happy with the way it looked. Take it outside, it looks a lot better. Well, then the weather shifted. We had gorgeous weather, low humidity, nice and warm, perfect for doing lacquer work, and then it immediately got cold, and I made the mistake of trying to put on the clear lacquer, the gloss coats, after that. Really, really bad idea. Actually, no. First, I tried to do a spray shellac coat to seal the toner coats before doing the gloss lacquer. I got that backwards. And the shellac that I had was fairly old, and shellac does not age well. If you leave it, especially a can of it, I didn't realize it actually goes bad. It has a shelf life probably less than a year if it heat cycles, and it went bad, and it alligatored the entire outside finish of the radio and ruined all my toner. Huge disappointment. Actually, no, yes, I did put the shellac on, sorry. I put the gloss lacquer on it. The gloss lacquer alligatored on top of the shellac, and I tried to save it by using lacquer thinner to remove the gloss, which hopefully lacquer thinner wouldn't react with shellac, because shellac is an alcohol-based, or alcohol solute. So I tried that, and it ate right through the shellac layer and right through the toner and destroyed my finish. So I had to completely start over from scratch on the cabinet, which is why I have this wonderful shot. I was able to save the trim, though. I got lucky. It didn't alligator so badly on the trim for whatever reason, so I sanded down lightly some of the areas that did alligator, and I was able to touch those up because thankfully the areas where you don't have to see the grain, you can get away with just throwing more toner on there and obliterating it further, and you still get a solid color. And then once the weather warmed up again, I very carefully went back, toned it, and then skipped shellacking over the toner and just went straight for it with the deft clear gloss. One other thing that I would definitely do differently is the finish on a lot of Philco's cathedral sets from this time period. I have 3 now, and I have one that has a completely original finish, and I have an ad describing the finish. They did not have a gloss. The finish is actually described as being satin, and looking at the original radios that I do have, it is very much a flat satin finish. It's very nice looking, but it is not this deep hand-rub piano or French polish finish. And I didn't try to go for that on this one. I just put on 3 or 4 coats of clear gloss. I wet sanded it once or twice, and then I used a little bit of polishing compound. What's it called? Rotten stone, and a little bit of soapy water, effectively, to try and cut down on the orange peel finish at the end. And despite not going with the flat, which I'll definitely do I have a Philco 60B that I need to do, and I'm going to try and replicate that nice satin finish using semi-gloss deft instead of gloss. I do like the semi-gloss finish that they get with this. I did an airline movie dial set with it, and it looks great. So next time, skipping the gloss, going with semi. But ultimately, once the grill cloth went in, and I test fit it prior to finishing off the cabinet, I test fit the grill cloth. But ultimately, I think the cabinet came out fantastic. I took some shots of it outside in the sunlight, cleaned the knobs and scooch put all that back in, and it really just looks good. Can't say much about the performance, though. Again, it's only a 4-tube superhet with barely one stage of IF amplification. But it does work, and for what it is, it'll be a fantastic addition to my mom's office. So I did want to get some video of the thing playing with it in the cabinet and in better lighting, but it was already in its new home by the time I thought of that. So if you want to stick around to the end of the video, I have a short clip off my iPhone of it playing, and I apologize for the black borders on either sides. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll have some test equipment and other videos. I went to an estate sale recently and got some cool stuff, so I'll be sharing that with you.
As a friend, you'll leave as part of the family. Sandberg Volvo car.
Like coating on those nails. Next take the DM. And you want
It in the pitch. Ball one. Williams.
arrow back just for that.
To the Shoreline location. For more information, call the Shoreline store or learn more online at franklumber.com. In this current climate, are you...
Claro, porque si es una persona querida, vamos a conocer su historia, su biografía. ¿Qué es lo que hay que hacer?
New services.
Long enough for her toast to dry, because otherwise he's going to be kind of smelly in public.
After a draft pick by Seattle in 2010, came up to the big leagues with the Mariners in 2013, made his debut right here at this ballpark, Minute Maid Park in Houston that year. He got the win, 7-1, the pitch. Low and inside, ball three balls. And strikeout effort. Rick will also have our first Mariners magazine of the year tomorrow.